Morton, a new transferring nurse going to a small hospital in a small town, meets a tired and overworked Dr. Ida, who is the only doctor in town willing to help patients for little to no money. As they begin working, they notice a grotesque and horrible demon hunting the premises, trying to kidnap the patients and take them to the depth of the underworld, with Ida and Morton being the only people able to save themselves and the vulnerable patients by performing certain ritualistic tasks. Hi folks, I'm R, and welcome to a video which has many good messages displaying humanity and kindness in midst of evil and cruelty. If you guys enjoy watching gameplays, you can check out my gaming channel by clicking on the card above or the link in the description. Keep in mind that this video will have spoilers, and with that said, let's begin. Hannah, the secretary of J.P. Vermander, the son of a rich estate owner, goes to his office to be faced with scrutiny to why his company's profits are much lower than before. Hannah explains that the profits are only 1% lower as the government has increased the threshold on how much is needed to be donated for tax to be deducted. Despite still saving a lot of money, as otherwise Vermander would need to pay a lot more in taxes if not donated, he becomes infuriated and enraged by greed, commanding Hannah to prepare his ritual, a ritual that seemingly leads to the death of many in the hospital. Hannah, being a kind-hearted person just placed in a bad working environment, pleads with Vermander not to perform the ritual as the people in the hospital are innocent, but nothing seems to shake Vermander's determination in performing the ritual and killing people. The scene then changes to the hospital with a new recruit, Nurse Morton, arriving at the hospital, introducing himself to Dr. Ida. Dr. Ida is surprised as she didn't expect any new recruits, with Nurse Morton explaining that an email was sent that is being transferred. Ida explains that the hospital is barely funded, with it being understaffed and lacking any modern technology, with their using pen and paper to keep records of the patients. She appreciates Morton's presence as she's been under a lot of stress, being swamped with work, managing the work of tens of people by herself alone. She then continues to show Morton around, explaining that there are 3 patients in tonight, with no one but herself staying over to take care of them. The hospital barely having any supply of meds, she gives them what she can to sedate their pain, which all displays what a severe condition the hospital is in. The hospital indeed requires any donation whatsoever, as the patients and the doctors are in desperate need of funding. Ida then goes on to check on the patients, with the first one being Tammy, someone who came in to get her tooth pulled. Second patient is someone who didn't give out her information, as she seems to be hiding the fact that she had an injury from her boss, whom Ida wrote down as Jane Doe. Finally, checking on the third patient called Lank Boyd, who injured his back, who is accompanied by his wife Jasmine. Ida intends to head back to the reception room to accompany Morton when she gets approached by him, who asks her to go and check the phone. Picking up the phone, she speaks to Hannah, J.P. Vermander's secretary, who tells them about Vermander's plans on summoning a demon to kill every last person in the hospital. Morton, becoming terrified, stays put and promises to help Ida and the patients, even though it's the very first few minutes of the first night of him in the hospital. Hannah then goes on to explain, after sneaking to Vermander's office and reading one of their family's ancient ritualistic books, as long as the demon is evaded till sunrise, it disappears without harming anyone, but the catch is, there are many rules that need to be followed. The first set of rules are to keep all the doors and windows closed and to stay in the rooms the people were originally in. As Ida checks on the patients to make sure that they're okay, closing all doors and windows, she goes back to the reception area and waits until the hour passes to 11 p.m. That's when a horrifying bloodthirsty demon entity breaks into the hospital, growling in a vicious and menacing manner, but soon leaves as it doesn't find any open doors leading to any patients. Hannah calls back, informing Ida and Morton that the demon will now try to gain more power from electronics, using telephones to overpower the targeted people. Hannah explains when a telephone is ringing, it must be picked up. If there's silence, it should be correspondingly treated with silence, but if there's any sound whatsoever, a mantra must be recited to subdue the powers of the demon. As time passes, Ida asks Morton to take over for the next hour as she's very tired, with them agreeing to take shifts every other hour. Morton checks on the patient, closes the doors and windows, and comes to the horrifying realization what Hannah said was true, with an evil presence being behind telephones ringing in different rooms. Morton follows the rules, picks up the telephones and recites the mantra when he hears any sound, and does the opposite when there's no sound. An hour passes and Hannah informs them that the demon will flicker the lights this time, and to combat this, the person present at the room must close their eyes for a few seconds for the flicker to disappear. Ida, taking over, follows the rules, with the demon visiting the hospital but not managing to take the blood of anyone. Hannah this time explains the demon will try to gain more power through TV transmissions, and when a TV turns on its own with only static on, it must be turned off immediately to get rid of the demon. This time, Morton takes over, who starts feeling inspired by Ida, asking her how she can run an entire hospital on her own, what she has been doing for the past 46 years. That's when she explains that she's the only one that the patients can rely on, being left with no other choice. Yet still, instead of nagging and complaining, loving what she does, getting a sense of pride, taking care of the patients, and even appreciating them, as without them, she wouldn't have a job. This displays what a golden character Ida truly is, despite her cold attitude in the very beginning. Meanwhile, Morton being asked by Ida why he chose this hospital with a heavy workload, he explains that it was a decision he made for his daughter, as the hospital is within a quiet small town, with both of them enjoying the countryside. Morton then subsequently shuts all the doors and windows, picking up all the telephones, shutting his eyes when lights flicker and turning off TVs, eventually getting back to the reception area. An hour passes and the demon soon appears, but having no one to take, it leaves as quick as it came. Hannah calls again, informing Morton and Ida to extinguish any lit candles they find, as the demon could draw power from them. As Hannah is about to explain another crucial piece of information, the electricity cuts off without Hannah explaining something she was about to. Ida, concerned to what might have been missed, follows all the rules she knew of, coming across lit candles she had never seen before. An hour then passes and the demon soon arrives, but soon leaves as all the rules had been followed. This time, Morton takes over, following all the rules until an hour passes and the demon arrives, but leaving empty-handed. Ida and Morton switch alternating shifts and rest for an hour in between until sunrise, saving themselves and the patients, with the demon returning to the depth of the realm it once came from. Managing to keep everyone alive, the demon fails to claim any blood after being summoned, which breaks a key aspect of the agreement in the ritual. In the ritual, it's mentioned when the demon is summoned, it must spill and claim some blood, as otherwise the pact between the ritual performers and demon is broken, as a result setting the demon free. As the pact is broken, the demon is finally free after generations of being enslaved by the Vermander family, able to roam the bowels of hell freely. However, as a final day being in the world, the demon decides to visit someone special, someone it had built unshakable grudge against. No one but the horrible man, JP Vermander, who decided to kill every last person in the hospital to save his 1% wealth. Something very small, especially as Vermander's wealth was built over time, charging large sums of money from poor people paying ground rents for the lands they had property on. The demon starts approaching Vermander slowly and menacingly, which confuses Vermander, who believes the demon works for him. But as he realizes the demon is not backing away, he tries to run, but as it's too late, the demon savagely injures Vermander, with the horrifying howls of the demon waking the entire town up. Hannah, still being in the Vermander estate, having slept in the guest room due to being very tired, wakes up to the loud howls, noticing how Vermander is severely mangled and bleeding, gasping his last breaths, close to death. Hannah wanting to leave him behind, showing the same level of disrespect and disregard he showed to everyone else, treating everyone as they're beneath him. Her good and kind-hearted nature prevents her going to his aid, taking him to the very same hospital he wanted to destroy. Vermander, despite being hated for what he had done, was given a room in front of the reception area, being treated no differently than any other patient. Being in front of the reception area, he observes how many patients were going in and out, being treated by the only doctor and nurse present, working hard to keep patients alive and well taken care of. Vermander realizes that the 1% wealth he was so protective of actually meant something important. It meant the lives of hundreds or thousands of people, with him observing the meaning of humanity and kindness, feeling something no Vermander before him has ever felt: remorse and humility. From that day onwards, Vermander vows to donate more money and help the hospital and people, realizing his money wasn't going to waste. However, due to the ritual pact being broken, which also granted Vermanders their dirty wealth, JP loses all of the estates, who despite being on the brink of poverty, donates his last bit of money to the hospital. JP, becoming homeless, as a return of favor and goodwill, Ida provides him with a room in the hospital, with him taking a job as a food delivery driver to get back on his feet. Morten, a good man who wanted a quiet town for himself and his daughter, settles in nicely in the town, starting to live in it, with Ida still being the only and the most caring doctor in town. With the money donated by JP Vermander, Ida manages to renovate the hospital and increase its supplies to provide the best care possible, with them hiring Hannah, a good-hearted person working for them as their accountant. Hannah finds working in the hospital very rewarding and feels very happy for helping people, while having a great boss who appreciates her. This is the best possible outcome, with Vermander redeeming himself from being an ignorant and close-minded man, with Hannah finding a great replacement for her job, and for the hospital getting the funding it needed. There are a variation of bad endings depending on how many people fall victim to the summoned demon. Worst possible ending can be achieved if everyone dies within the hospital, including all the patients, Dr. Ida and Nurse Morten. An investigation is subsequently undergone, with Vermander's influence keeping him clear of any charges or investigation. Without the presence of Dr. Ida, the only doctor who worked at the town hospital, the hospital ends up shutting down, with many patients left uncared for and untreated, causing the entire town to feel its impacts. As Nurse Morten disappears, his daughter is left orphaned in an unfamiliar new town, questioning herself till her very last days to what happened to her father. The only person who truly knew what happened in that night was Vermander's secretary, Hannah, who in fear kept her silence and worked for Vermander as long as she could. All Hannah wanted to do was to pack her bags and travel as far as she could, but her pathetic salary did not allow for that. Hannah was doomed to work for a despicable man who caused misery and death upon innocent people. People like Ida and Morten, who just wanted to help others by overworking themselves and possibly even not getting good money for it. All that so that Vermander could save his 1% wealth. The case is closed unsolved, with Hannah keeping her silence, with the entire town suffering as a result of the hospital closure. As Jane Doe was a worker who didn't want to reveal her boss that she had an injury in order to be able to get back to her family, possibly being an illegal worker and not wanting to lose her job by revealing her details, no one bats an eye after her disappearance. As she had no recorded information, with her existence fully being vanished, Ida fails to report her disappearance, with no one believing what she says, as there's no record of such a person. Only Morten and Ida knowing about Jane Doe's disappearance, they live the rest of their lives feeling guilty for not helping her. Someone who worked very hard to provide for her family and get back to them by keeping her personal information secured, just for now never being able to get back to them, with her family never finding out what happened to her. On the other hand, this ending has some variations, which could include only one patient dying, both Tammy and Lang and his wife dying, or all of them dying apart from either Ida or Morten or both. When this happens, the endings overlap but ultimately provide the same outcome. As investigation is undergone for the disappearances, whether Ida or Morten or both get arrested if they survive but the patients die. Despite their innocence and care for the patients, Vermander's influence causes the authorities to dismiss lack of evidence and close the case by arresting Ida and Morten. Morten's daughter suffers a horrible fate of being left alone in a new, unfamiliar town, barely managing to survive, with the hospital also shutting down, as the town didn't have any other doctor, or a doctor as caring and kind-hearted as Ida, which leads to many patients being untreated. Hannah, being the only one knowing what happened, mysteriously vanishes as well with no trace, with only one lit candle being found in her house, which clearly indicates that Vermander used the ritual against her too, with the demon taking her. With no evidence and no witness leading to Vermander destroying the hospital and making the town a place with no hospital, Vermander gets what he wanted, regaining his precious 1%. Langboyd, a man who suffered from borderline poverty, barely making the ends meet, wanted to fix his roof on his own to save the last bit of money, then spend it on professional contractors. Not being experienced, Lang falls from his roof, suffering a tragic back injury. Wanting to protect his family and provide them with a good life, his unfortunate disappearance does the exact opposite, leading to a tragedy. If only he would spend the money as his wife Jasmine told him, so he would still live a happy yet humble life together with his wife. For Tammy, a shy and awkward girl who didn't want to bother anyone, the excruciating pain from her tooth forced her to visit the hospital, a visit that would be her last, someone who didn't deserve such a tragic fate. Therefore, the best ending is when Vermander loses all of his estates and wealth, but in return gains his humanity, helping vulnerable people and seeing the value in what a hospital brings. Despite losing all of his assets, he becomes a happier man, living a more humble life alongside other kind people such as Ida, Hannah, and Morten. And that's the end of the video, folks. If you enjoyed it, you can stay tuned for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. You can also send me your game requests by tagging me on Twitter or sending me a DM. It's been your host Star. Until the next video, have a fantastic day.